So hello and welcome to the first edition of SustainaTalk TV in this new year. Today we want to address a topic that you may already have heard in the media before, the so-called Act on Corporate Due Diligence Obligations in Supply Chain. I really think a rather long and also complicated term. And to better understand the content of this law and the possible implications it may have on us as a company, I invited two guests in the studio. A warm welcome to Waltraud Haas from Purchasing and Christoph Sahm from the Legal Department.
Thanks, Claudia.
Before we start, as always, a few either-or questions to you. Christoph, let's start. Summer or winter?
Summer.
Waltraud, rather beer or wine?
Of course, wine.
The next question to you, Christoph. Chocolate or crisps?
Chocolate.
And last but not least, a hardcover book or rather an e-book?
A real hardcover book.
So, but now really let's talk on this Act on Corporate Due Diligence Obligations in Supply Chains. Christoph, what is this law about?
Yeah, maybe in general, the Act entered into force on 1st of January of this year, and it affects companies, German companies, which means they have to have their headquarter in Germany, but then all international sites are included. And the companies have to have a certain size, so they have to have more than 3,000 employees, and this will change from next year on, from 1st of January next year. Then it's enough if they have more than 1,000 employees. These companies have to fulfill certain due diligence obligations, and these due diligence obligations respect two areas. The first area is human rights, and the second area is environmental protection. And the special feature of this act is, and this is very new, it is not enough to look at your own business, but it is essential that you also look at your supply chain. So the affected companies have to try that abuse of human rights and environmental rights are avoided.
I guess Wacker is affected from this law, and if so, what does this really mean for Wacker as a company?
That's correct. Wacker is affected. We have our headquarter in Germany, and of course we have more than 3,000 employees. And this means that we have to fulfill all the obligations which are laid down in the Act. And this starts with a comprehensive risk analysis. We have to do documentation. We have to report every year about our activities concerning the law. We have to give that report to the competent authorities. We have to publish, and we already published, a policy statement. You can see it on the homepage. And another thing essential, we have to implement a certain structure, a certain organization to fulfill the obligations of this act. And in that way, we have now installed the new function of a human rights officer in my person. We have allocated the responsibility within the executive board with Dr. Hartl as the CEO. And we have implemented new structures and new processes, especially in the areas of human resources and purchase. And with all that, we are confident that we fulfill all the obligations of the Act, and I think we are already fit also for future legislation which may come, for example, by the European Union.
Okay. Waltraud, speaking about purchasing, how can we convince our customers that our supply chain already is clean?
As you might know, Claudia, and most of our Wacker colleagues know, Wacker has joined the initiative Together for Sustainability in 2015, so more than 8 years ago. And this initiative, Together for Sustainability, now already more than or around 40 global operating chemical companies have joined this initiative, and they are setting sustainable standards for assessments and audits. And luckily, since Wacker is a member of this initiative, this helped us a lot in the last years already to receive for most of our key suppliers a certified scorecard regarding their sustainability performance. So here we are already on a good track and have a great transparency about the sustainability performance of our suppliers.
So we already became member of the Together for Sustainability initiative back in 2015, as you indicated. Were these measures already enough, or did we have to implement further actions?
Yes, there were a few additional processes and systems which we had to implement. For example, we have around 3 years ago, we have created our own supplier code of conduct. This supplier code of conduct summarizes all the requirements out of this law and in a very short and precise way. And we have also integrated the supplier code of conduct in our general terms and conditions. And therefore, in every new contract, this clause will now be included and will be a binding contract clause for with all of our direct suppliers. And here we are already on a good track.
It really seems that we already have a great transparency within our supply chain. But what do we do in case of negative audit results with a supplier?
So in every case where we receive a negative finding or a bad scorecard, or even when we get negative news out of the media, our strategic buyers are checking the violation, how risky it is for us. And then they make a risk validation internally, and the result out of the risk validation, it's also regularly discussed with our procurement management. And for example, in very critical cases or where we see a very high violation, we also involve the Human Rights Committee or also Christoph as Human Rights Officer to discuss further internal and external measures. And our strategic buyer are discussing and monitoring the measurements, and it's also very well documented in an own dashboard. And you might now ask, what happens if we have really a very critical violation? Or, for example, if a supplier doesn't do anything to improve his or her sustainability performance. And here, indeed, we have to think about a strategy change with this supplier, and it can be that for a certain time we put him on hold, or we even have to think to phase the supplier out. But of course, this is not our corporate or general target at all. We really want to establish positive and long-term good sustainability, performance and standards with our suppliers. So this is really the long-term target which we want to establish. Okay, but Christoph, you also indicated the Human Resources Department, and this law is not only valid for our supply chain, but also really impacts us as a company as such. So how do we incorporate this law internally?
Yeah, that is correct. So it's not enough just to look at the supply chain. You have to also analyze your own business, not only in Germany, but international. And that's what we are doing at the moment. So we are undergoing a comprehensive risk analysis at the moment. And we work together with the local MDs, with the people responsible for the local sites, and with the CEOs. And what we do additionally is to develop a training to help them to report about environmental issues and about human rights related things.
Now let's assume an employee noticed something where he or she thinks this might be in conflict with this law. So how should we act as an employee in such a case?
Yeah, I mean, in my role as a human rights officer, I only can appeal to all employees. If you notice something, some problems related to environmental issues or human rights related issues, please contact me personally, or you can also use our whistleblowing system. You don't have to know your name if you don't want. And you can look at it, you can find our whistleblowing system on the internet homepage.
Okay, and as a last question, which also is of interest for me personally, does this law also has an impact in our private life? For example, myself in the role of a consumer?
Not directly. So the private consumer is not obliged by the law, but I would say in an indirect way. Because if you as a private consumer buy something, for example, from a company which is affected by the law, then you have the reason to assume that this company has a look at human rights issues, at environmental protection issues, and I think that is an advantage.
And this binding obligation of each individual company, and therefore also the associated transparency, especially in the supply chain, really helps that the requirement out of the Prevention Act, like to protect human rights, to protect the safety and health and also the environment, this really helps to drive the standards into a global world. And Wacker is a part of it.
Yeah, dear audience, I hope that we were able to bring some transparency in this Act on Corporate Due Diligence Obligations in Supply Chains. Thanks a lot to my guests in the studio.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
And with this, I wish you all the best and stay sustainable also in this year.
Vaker, creating tomorrow's solutions.